Hi, I'm Eliza. When I turned 18, I had to deal with the unthinkable. A few months after a car accident, I found myself crawling across a hospital floor in pain. I felt like I wasn't going to make it. I couldn't move my legs and I kept crying for help, but nothing came out. It was then that I realized someone had poisoned me. This wasn't an accident. They wanted me to die here. Before we get to that horrible moment in my life, I have to tell you how I ended up in that hospital in the first place. One night, my mother was driving me home. We had been fighting for a while, and I said some horrible things to her. You see, my mom always acted like she didn't want me at all. She had for most of my life, but a few months before this, my father passed away. It was really sudden, and I never even got to go to the funeral. Since then, my mom had been weird. We were struggling with money, and her whole demeanor changed. She was just mean. She constantly made me feel like I was going crazy. After the fight died down, I started taking some videos to send to my friends. That's when it happened. Everything went white. I heard a loud crash, and in an instant, I was lying on the road. I was in so much pain. Had someone just hit us? What happened? Everything was hazy after that. I heard sirens and doctors. Everyone seemed so panicked. Was I dying? I felt like I was in a bad dream or something. I kept blacking out from the pain. Something had to be broken. A lot of things felt broken. I was in and out for a while. But then I remember waking up in a hospital bed. I could barely open my eyes. It's almost like they were swollen or something. I could hear my mom talking in hushed voices to someone. She was talking about caskets and flowers. I wanted to call out to her to tell her that I was okay, but I couldn't talk or move. What was wrong with me? That's when I heard my mom say the word funeral. I could tell she was crying, and that's when it hit me. She meant my funeral. Was I going to die? Couldn't they tell I was alive, that I was awake? Before I could do anything, I heard a lot of beeping. I tried to move, to do anything, but the room went black again. I'm not sure how much later it was, but I heard my mom's voice again. She was talking to a man asking how much longer it would be. Did she mean until I died? Until I woke up? I had to show her that I was okay. She had to be so worried about me. I opened my eyes. Really opened my eyes. I felt like I had never seen light before. I gasped at how bright the light coming in from the window was, and in that moment, I saw my mom. I tried to smile at her. I was okay. She rushed over to me, but her expression wasn't happiness or joy. It was like surprise and horror. Did I really look that horrible? I started to panic. Was my face deformed or something? Was I missing limbs? I'd never seen her look that horrified. A loud beep rang out once my mom was beside me. I suddenly couldn't breathe. I felt my mom's hands on my chest as she yelled for help. After that, I think I was asleep for a really long time. When I woke up, there was a nurse in my room. She freaked out when she saw me alive. She told me I had been in a coma for 6 months. I couldn't believe it. 6 months? What had I missed? What did I look like? I tried to sit up, but she just told me to lay back and relax. That's when my doctor came in. I felt kind of nervous when I saw him. He had this coldness with him, like he was going to freeze a room just walking into it. He handed me a container of liquid and told me to drink it, that I would feel better once I did. I told him I didn't want to, and he shoved it in my hands, yelling at me to drink it. You'd think someone would be a little nicer to a girl who just got out of a coma. I managed to pretend to drink the liquid. The doctor left, saying he would call my mom. When I heard she was on her way, I could barely handle how excited I was. My mom walked in about 10 minutes later, but I hardly recognized her. She was wearing a fur coat. Her hair was done beautifully, and she carried a luxury purse. We had been so poor before. Had she won the lottery while I was in a coma? Seriously, how much had I missed? The doctor told me I was going to have to work to get my strength back up. But I was ready. I had a second chance at life, and I wasn't going to waste it. Over the next couple of days, things were really awkward. You see, I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair trying to relearn absolutely everything. My face was all beat up and my nose was crooked. I looked like a monster. Then there was that doctor. I felt like he was always watching me. He was so hostile. I started to feel like he was out to get me. I had this fear that something bad was going to happen. One day during therapy, my worst fears came true. In the middle of trying to walk, one of my crutches completely came apart. I fell on the ground hard and cracked my head open. There was blood everywhere. When I looked up, the doctor was just standing there. When my mom came in after the incident, I told her how weird the doctor was being. To my surprise, my mom told me to avoid him. She even told me she'd talk to the office about getting me a doctor I was more comfortable with. I was kind of shocked. My mom had never done things like that for me before the accident. That night, I couldn't sleep. I felt lonely and every bone in my body really ached. I kept hoping someone would help me or bring me some medicine or something. Of course, the doctor came in. He handed me a cup of tea and told me to just relax. I was wary at first, but the tea looked so warm and comforting, so I drank it. All of a sudden, I felt a horrible pain in my stomach. I dropped the cup of tea and it shattered into a million pieces. No one came running in. The doctor didn't even move a muscle. I yelled to him that it felt like my insides were trying to crawl outside my body, like my stomach was trying to kill me. Thank God he's here, I thought. But he shrugged. He told me to stop overreacting and to just go to sleep. He said I'd feel better if I slept for a while. What? How did this crazy person expect me to be able to sleep in this much pain? He got up and left the room. I could hardly see straight. I knew I wasn't overreacting. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I started crawling across the ground, dragging my legs behind me. I felt helpless. The pain was so intense. I managed to get to the door of my room, and that's when I saw them. My mom and the doctor kissing. What on earth was going on? I hovered in the doorway, trying to keep from screaming, trying to listen. The doctor was talking about how much insurance money they were about to make. My mom thanked the doctor for doing what he did. But what had he done? I clutched my stomach in pain. Had I been poisoned? I strained to hear what they were saying as they walked away. The doctor told her they had to find my phone no matter what, that there was too much evidence on it. The two got in the elevator and I was alone. I crawled across the floor, desperate to find someone. Was I going to die here? Alone? Had I seriously just been poisoned by a doctor? I felt the room around me start to get dark. With the strength I had left, I made it into the bathroom in my hospital room and made myself sick. I had to get the poison out of me, but I was just in so much pain. I laid on the floor, not knowing if I was going to make it. In those couple of hours, all I could think about was my dad. If he was still around, would any of this have happened? Within a few hours, I started to feel more normal. So, I decided I had to find my phone at the crash site. If there was evidence on it, I had to find it. I got my crutches and called myself a cab. I had to sneak out of the back of the hospital. Even then, I was almost positive the doctor had seen me. I managed to get myself in a cab and I directed him to the site of the car accident. The guardrail was still bent. I told him to just let me go here, but he waited to help me look. What could possibly be on my phone? I know I had been recording when the accident happened. Maybe there was evidence that the crash was my mom's fault? That she was drunk or something? After what seemed like hours, I found my phone in a bush. I yanked it off the ground, covered it in grime and dust. As soon as we got back to the car, the cab driver helped me plug in my phone. I turned it on and opened my videos. Nothing could prepare me for the last video I took. I looked normal in it, happy. I was recording myself singing to the radio to send to a friend. Beside me, my mom looked so mad. Then, it happened. My mom reached across and unbuckled my seatbelt. I flinched in shock, but it was too late. My mom swerved the car and it flipped over the guardrail. Then the screen went black. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My own mom had crashed our car. But for what? It all dawned on me. The nurses being shocked I wasn't getting better, the new purses my mom had, her kissing the doctor poisoning me, the time I flatlined after I woke up. They had all been her and the doctor's doing. I didn't know what to do. My own mom had tried to kill me. She and the doctor made sure I was in a coma just so they could take my insurance money. In my anger and sadness, I called the police. The trial was fast, but my heart broke over and over again. The most shocking part? My dad showed up. He walked to the trial, and when he announced his name, I knew who he was. He started talking on the stand. My head was spinning. What on earth was going on? My dad explained that he had been looking for me for a very long time since his wife left me for another man. After she had kidnapped me and used me as a way to make money with that doctor, she made sure my dad will never find us. And then, my dad confessed that she wasn't even my biological mother. She was my stepmom pretending to be my mom. We didn't even share the same genes. I was so shocked. But then I understood why she cared so little about me. She never even saw me as her real daughter. But everything made sense now. Despite the shock that I was in and all that I've been through, I was happy to know that my dad was around now to take care of me. As for the woman I used to call my mom, well, I hope she rots in jail. How did you like my story of betrayal and mystery? Has anyone ever lied to you like this or tried to hurt you? Let us know in the comments down below.
One morning I woke up and I couldn't feel my hand. It had happened to me a lot before, but this time it felt different. It felt like my hand had died. My arm was okay, but then after my wrist I couldn't feel anything. Just air. I moved my fingers but felt nothing. They were like ghost fingers. I started shaking it, but I couldn't wake it up. I was still half asleep, so I whacked it against the wall without really thinking. Suddenly, I heard my dad's voice and he was angry. He worked night shifts, so he'd probably just gone to bed. But I didn't care. I was starting to freak out. It hadn't lasted this long before. I ran to the bathroom and put my hand underwater. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even believe the temperature of the water. I touched it with my other hand and realized the water was burning hot. Of course, it had to happen to my right hand, the hand I use for everything. I wanted to Google what was going on, but I couldn't even type with my left hand, and I ended up dropping my phone. The screen shattered, and when I tried to pick it up, some of the glass got stuck in my hand. Great. So my right hand was dead, and my left hand was now bleeding. I called out for my mom, but she was already standing in the doorway. "What's with all the noise?" she said to me in an angry tone. "Mom, I can't feel my hand. It's completely dead," I whimpered, and then I started crying. She just laughed at me and said to give it a good shake and it'd be okay. Then she went back to bed and told me to stop acting like a baby. I couldn't believe it. I cursed myself for always sleeping on my right side. I'd been so tired the night before that I'd just passed out. I must have slept on my arm for more than 8 hours. What if I'd done some serious damage? The worst part was that we had a big exam at school that day, and I had a date with my boyfriend after school. How would I write the exam? How would he hold my hand if I couldn't even feel it? It'd be like I was holding hands with air. I grabbed onto the sink, and even as I saw my fingers grip onto it, I felt nothing. Trying to make breakfast was a complete disaster. I spilled the milk everywhere, and eventually I sat there and used my teeth to open the bread. And then I ate a slice like an animal, using my teeth to rip it apart. My left hand with the cuts on it was starting to hurt now, and it was weird, but the pain felt good. At least pain meant my hand was alive, unlike my other hand, which was just hanging there like a dead thing. Imagine not having hands. How did people survive? I shivered at the thought of it. When I got to school that day, I noticed my right hand was burnt. I hadn't even noticed it until then. Well, at least it didn't hurt. My boyfriend gave me a weird look when he saw me and pointed to my zip. I looked down and gasped. I'd forgotten to zip it up, but I couldn't do it. He started laughing and asked if I needed some help. At the exact moment that he reached out to zip it up for me, our math teacher passed by and gave us detention for inappropriate behavior. I couldn't believe it, and now we had to go sit for our exam. I told my boyfriend about my dead hand, and he said if I wrapped it up and compressed it, it might get better. I used my scarf and it honestly looked ridiculous. It was exam time. I spoke to the teacher in charge and explained what had happened, and he said it was the worst excuse he'd ever heard. I unwrapped my scarf and tried to pick up the pencil, but it was impossible. So I just sat there. Halfway through the exam, I started to panic. What if it never went back to normal? I couldn't sit there any longer. I got up, and as I pushed the desk away from me, it fell. I didn't realize how much pressure I'd put on it. It fell onto the girl sitting in front of me, and she screamed. I was mortified. I ran out of there without looking back. I ran all the way down the corridor, and when I got outside, I suddenly came up with an idea. Maybe if I heard it, I'd be able to feel it. Like when you don't know if you're still dreaming and you pinch yourself. If it hurts, it means you're awake and it's real life. I looked around and saw some big rocks by the school car park. I picked one up and dropped it onto my hand. I'm not joking. I felt nothing. This was serious now. I needed to take drastic measures. I don't know why I didn't just go see the school nurse. But no, I decided to take matters into my own hands, quite literally. Our school is near a busy road. I made my way over to the bus stop, and then the stupidest idea ever came to me. The next time a bus pulled up, I'd crouch down by the wheel and let it roll over my hand. I mean, that wouldn't hurt that much, right? So just as bus pulled up, I pretended to drop my purse and let them get on the bus first. The driver hadn't noticed me, and suddenly I heard the engine starting up and then crunch. I didn't feel anything, but the bus rolled right over my hand and I managed to pull it out just in time before the back wheels went over it a second time. And then I passed out. I woke up in an ambulance being rushed to the hospital. The wheel had completely broken every bone in my hand and even crushed the nerves. I looked down at it and almost vomited. There was blood everywhere. And then I heard the panic in the paramedics' voices. We're going to need to amputate this one. There's proper nerve damage, and if it travels up her arm, she'll lose her whole limb. What? I started thrashing about on the stretcher. They couldn't take my hand. My life would be over. I kept going in and out of consciousness on the way to the hospital, and when we finally arrived, my mom and dad were there. My mom was hysterically crying and blaming herself for not listening to me. How did I explain that I'd done this to myself? That I deliberately let a bus run over my hand? The doctors had to hold me down. I kept screaming that I didn't want to lose my hand, and the head doctor said that if I didn't hold still, they'd need to take off my whole arm. He said there was already serious nerve damage and they had no other option. It was too dangerous to wait, so they amputated my hand. After the surgery, I couldn't even look at my arm. It was just a stump. Of course, it was all bandaged up, but it looked disgusting. I was crippled now. I felt so upset. Little did I know that while I was undergoing surgery, my mom was calling a lawyer to file a lawsuit to sue the bus driver. When she told me that the bus driver had been called in for questioning, I felt like my life was crumbling down around me. It wasn't his fault, but how did I tell her this? They even had witnesses, the old ladies who had seen me drop my purse. How would I tell them the truth? Meanwhile, I couldn't even go to the toilet by myself or bathe myself. It was just horrible. I was in the hospital for about 10 days and they only discharged me so I could go to the court case with the bus driver. I was so nervous as I walked in there, my stumpy arm hanging by my side. The bus driver was sitting there, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. The old ladies gave their testimony first, and I couldn't even look at them as they told the judge how I definitely dropped my purse. They seriously needed to get their eyes checked. We took a break, and as we were going back into the court, a familiar face came running towards us. It was the school janitor. He turned out to be a friend of the bus driver's, and he said he had video footage of what happened. Oh no. The judge let him play it, and I couldn't believe it. It showed everything. Me running out of school, dropping the rock on my hand, and then placing my purse at the foot of the wheel. It was all there. Who knew school CCTV cameras could catch so much? Now I had a lot of... The bus driver looked outraged and at the same time relieved. One of the old ladies fainted, and then the judge called me up and asked me to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so I did. she said we could go to the doctor the next day and discuss it. The doctor ran some tests and then called me back the next day. It was bad news. He told me that I had MS, multiple sclerosis. From the look on my mom's face, it wasn't a good thing. Had I done this to myself? The doctor then explained that it's a nerve disorder and that one of the most common symptoms is tingling and numbness. I sat there in shock. My right hand, it had just been numb. And because I was so impatient and scared, I'd gone and messed everything up and now I had no hand. No hand and MS. That was a tough pill to swallow. I knew that life wasn't going to be easy from that point, but I decided not to give up. I mean, at least I'm still alive. And guess what? I didn't really lose my amputated hand because I kept it. Yep, I asked to preserve it, and now I have an embalmed hand on the shelf of my room, sitting there like a creepy statue. And sometimes, I even like to scare people with it. I don't think that the ending of my story is sad, because there's so much I'm still grateful for. Wish me luck, and don't forget to share your comments below, and like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories.